BITSCHY. I'm director of the documentary This Train I Ride about female train opera in America. Yeah, and this is.
I'm ELLIS. I did the music for the film.
In America, there is a tradition, a subculture called hobos. It's hopping freight trains. It's illegal, and people are doing it still. The Great Depression in the 30s, and so my documentary is about female who are doing it now, and to understand why they are doing it, the quest of freedom, and what happened to them, to those girls, why they are doing it, and what happened in their hearts. I knew this culture, for a while, but I was touring in Europe with my band, in the USA with my band, playing in squats and punk houses, and then I've met a bunch of guys who were riding trains, and then I realized that the punk kids in the 90s, they start to riding trains like hobos, and so they rediscover a little bit this tradition. And so I kept it for a while in my head, and then I discovered the work of Mike Brody. He's a photographer, and he discovered photography while he was riding trains as a kid, and his photography are very great. I loved it. So I start to write because of this, and then it came up that it was more interesting to do something with girls who are riding trains, because with the punk community, for once there was a lot of girls doing it. Before it was very a male thing, and so there was girls. Now girls are doing it also. They are doing it by themselves. They don't depend on anybody, and I liked it very much. So I decided to take this direction for the documentary, and the documentary is about those girls, those independent girls who are, and the quest for freedom. Because you don't do this just for fun, because it's dangerous, it's exhausting, it's everything, So you have to have good reason to do that, and generally it's personal reason. I use some of my connection in the United States, the friends of friends, from the punk rock community, who gave me one contact, no, maybe two contacts in the Bay Area of girls who were riding trains. So that was one of the first steps, and the other girls, I've met them through the forum, a punk rock forum called Squat the Planet, and there is a lot of train riders who exchange about this way of life. It was a 4 years process. I did
dedication. Total
I
dedication.
did six travels in 4 years. The first ride was very scary. Was because you don't realize how is it until you are in it. So the first ride was especially because it was a junk train. You have different kind of trains, and the junk trains are the slowest and the not priority train, and they are shaky, shitty, dirty, noisy, and when you are in it with the adrenaline of not being caught by the cops. It's nighttime. You jump on the train is rolling. You know, it's so it's it took time for me to. You know, then but you stay like maybe 12 hours in the train, so you have time to. But the first hour I was like very tense. It was tense. Yeah. We didn't want to have like a chronological narration, you know. We just we wanted to have like a trip, you know, from the beginning till the end, and it's not just one story of someone, you know. It's like a bunch of girls, and it's at the end it's just one ride from the beginning till the end. That's why, you know, at the end of the movie, the sound of the train is stopping. You know, and that's the end of the trip. You know, and yeah, it's not linear.
He sent me a short film that he'd made,
Yeah.
but just a kind of synopsis of what it was about.
Yeah.
And it looked really like fascinating. It looked really incredible. And I'd been doing a series of work on my own with just by coincidence. I'd done a film called Mustang that was about 5 girls or 4 girls, and then 5 and 5 maybe, and another one called Bad Girl, which was about 2 women in Australia. So I was really interested to be doing films about women, and then this came along and it seemed like such a great subject, and then we sort of met. Yeah, I mean, I you know, I had a bunch of things to choose from, and Arno's project seemed really kind of noble and really kind of like really fascinating, and you know, when I eventually saw it, I was really kind of blown away by it. We met in Paris, and he showed me like 5 minutes of a sequence, and I'd already started making music and sending it to him, and I saw the image of Christina.
One was with Christina, and the other one was with Karen.
With Karen on the skateboard, and the one on the skateboard was just so beautiful and so kind of profound what she was saying, and I felt like the what I'd sent him, it sat really nicely with it, and it did something in a kind of way, and so that sort of gave me the courage to kind of to work on it, and then I didn't see the film at all. I just made music, and I wanted Arno to pick what he wanted, put it in, and then we worked on it after. Because it was such a kind of, you could see it was a really personal film for Arno, that he'd been in there, like really in there with them, and it was such a, you know, I'd never sort of heard about this idea before. And then I was working on a short film, and the photographer, he said to me, the best sort of photos that have really moved me of late is Brody's books on trains. And then this guy Julien Mignot, who's a photographer, he bought me the book. So I said, that's weird, because I've been asked to do music for a film on women who ride trains. So there was this weird sort of serendipity about it that sort of felt like, oh, something's telling me to do this, you know, which seems to happen to me more and more. And then I just asked Arno why he wanted me to do it. Because it's not like you can just do any film and do any music for anything. And I want to know why. And he wrote a really great considered letter that made me feel like I could maybe do something for it. And then I asked him to send me a few words about what he wanted it to do, and he wrote me a couple of words. And then I started making music based on that, which is primarily I kind of work like that in general, because I can't sit and look at something and make up music, but I can make music up. I seem to be able to sit down and make any sort of music up, but then find a home for it afterwards. And so I kind of like to work off just a few words so that it's not locked into something too rigid. And I like this process of working with a director like that, because they get to have a say and they get to also feel involved in the decision making. And you have a language, which is piece A, piece B, this one, I like that one like that. You have a language and something more like this, because we all don't have a musical language, or we all don't have a filmic language, but things like that you can say, oh, this piece here is something a bit like that, but can you make it? And then it was very easy to work together. I sat and wrote most of it on trains as well, because I was moving a lot. I was working on a record, and I decided to try and do it when I was moving all the time. I didn't write one piece in the studio. I wrote mostly in hotel rooms and on the metro, and on the Eurostar, because I was recording a Bad Seeds album at the time, going to Berlin and London. So there's a sense of, I guess there's a sense of movement in the music as well, this sort of minimal meditative movement going on.
Yeah, definitely.
And there was a sort of, also because I knew there was a lot, Arno told me there was a lot of train noise in there as well. And I actually mainly talked to him about the process of making it, because I was really fascinated, like, how do you do that? Get with a camera and get on, and what was it like? And like, he told me this story of being how scared he was, and I was really interested in that aspect, and hopefully some of that came through in what I was making. I generally work like that.
The first time I wasn't alone. I was with a boom operator who were two, and then after, Clara pushed me to, my producer, she pushed me to do it alone, which was a very good thing, you know, because it was way more intense with the girls, because we were just, you know, her and me, you know. And so for the gear, I was I tried to keep it like the most minimal thing, but because the more you have, the more weight you have, and it's exhausting. So the first time I had way too much stuff, and it was way too heavy. So, I have to cut things, but it was mostly with clothes. Because I need my gear, but so I had to accept to stink, you know, and to have like the minimum clothes, you know, and to stink. So, but yeah, and it's a camera, monopod, 3 lenses, a lot of batteries, because sometimes maybe you can be like 1 week without electricity. You never know, but you know. So I was like 1 week, you know, with independent, and also I just heated like several bars, because it's light, and it's you know, you got what you need, and it's very light. So you need 2 bars for the day, and it's good. So yeah, but the weight is so important, so important.
When I was asking Arno, he said to me, you can't imagine how you can smell so much after doing something like that. And he told me when he took the bus and he couldn't work out what the smell was, and realised that it was him from not washing and showering. There's so many actual physical things that are extraordinary about what he's done with this.
Yeah, it's terrible. It was very tough.
But actually, and what it does too is it actually highlights what these women go through to kind of, you know, do this. Like it's so kind of heroic and extraordinary, and that they decide to not be victims and work their way through it in that way. And it's so scary. I remember when he said to me how scared he was the first time, you know, that you don't really think about that. And then he's like, I had no idea. And like, and then how do you get off? Then you remember telling me like how he jumped off and he could never get it right and kept falling. And you know, like how hard, you just don't think about these things when you're watching it. I think there's a whole kind of other movie interview with Arno, or talk. You should do a narration over.
Yeah, I've kept I had little notes.
Yeah.
And I was writing all the stuff I suffered, you know, because I was like, I need to keep those, you know, yeah, because after, you know, because it's always, every day is more or less the same, you know. Yeah. So at the end, it's like a big mess and you lost those little details. So I was taking notes like, okay, this, you know, because I need to keep it and read it like maybe in a year because it's so funny how tough it is, you know, like how all the little stuff, the sleeping, nightmare sleeping in a little hole. Anyway, but it's part of the process, and it's very good to endure it. That I endure it also with them, you know, and but we share this together, you know, and yeah.
That really actually struck me, the intimacy between the women and Arno. Like, it seemed like he'd been really let into this world that, you know, I think women have to be kind of careful with men, you know, like, I mean, you're a woman, and I found that really kind of extraordinary. Like, it was so moving to see that these women who'd obviously been damaged by something in the past or whatever and were working through this, that they would let Arno in, which I think really speaks a lot about him too. You know, it was really great to see that. Like, as a guy watching that too, I found it incredibly moving. It was I mean, it's actually one project that I tell everybody about, that I meet. Like, I really talk about it a lot because yeah, I think it's a really extraordinary documentary. But yeah, I tell a lot of people about it, and I hope that it gets the kind of life and the public that it deserves, because there's something very deep about, and simple and very deep about it, and it seems very much now. You know, these women, you can trace a line through these women to Greta Thunberg now, where you see this kind of someone that's like taking the decision into their own hands, and you see with her too that the reaction of men hasn't changed at all, or certain men, you know. So it's really now, this kind of documentary, and it's nice to feel like you're part of something that's current and worthwhile, like really worthwhile.
It seems like it's going to be released in Finland in November in theaters.
Start writing your acceptance speech at the Oscars.
Yeah. It's going to be minimal, you know, very basic, you know.
No, you'll be able to find something to say.
But yeah, and for the rest, you know, we are working on it. You know, it's just the beginning. It's the first premiere today, so I don't know, but yeah, it's gonna be a lot, I guess. Enjoy the ride.